Okay, so this part of my own prison story is called Hanging by the Telephone. So I want to bring you back to a space in time, one of the first where I realized specifically the fucked upness of our punishment state. When I realized that things might not be the same as they seem to a kid from the old money suburbs, to a place where things can and very often do go very, very wrong. It was a time when I was here in Minneapolis, locked in the Hennepin County Jail. Us inmates called it being under the clock, because the clock tower of the old brownstone City Hall looms above the jail, which is built into the top floors of City Hall. Don't ask me what I was there for. Definitely for something to do with my drug habit. Probably for doing something illegal to get money for drugs. I can't remember with certainty. But I do remember that my dad was pissed, or pissed again, I should say. My mother was so angry that she had no words. The quiet suburb of my origin did not showcase criminals, and she was having none of it. So when I called home, it was my dad I talked to. My dad always making sure that I was okay, trying to help me survive, to get through the hell I was in, and to hopefully see me to a future like I have today. All of those calls he took. You have a collect call from Jay in the Hennepin County Jail. Please press 1 to accept this call. This call may be recorded. This call is from an inmate at the Hennepin County Jail. And that day, like so many others, he accepted the call. We talked on the phone in the day room of my unit, a pretty stark place with metal tables, octagonal ones with hard metal stools attached. A book cart stood in the corner filled with Stephen King and Danielle Steele and a few classics. King, okay, but I was always amazed at hard-ass prisoners' preferences for Danielle Steele. Right now I'm seeing a paper, Danielle Steele and the Carceral State. But I digress. Board games were stacked on another cart, and there was a decent-sized TV that was never turned to anything remotely watchable. At least for me, the guy who wanted to watch something on fashion or a thriller. So I was on the phone, and the phones were near the Sally port leading out of our unit. And above that, a guard was randomly in and out of the room that looked over us prisoners, keeping intermittent watch. I can't remember what Dad and I were talking about, probably directives to get my shit together, what I would do when I got out, or how I should be learning something from this episode. Certainly how our family did not do these things. Always that. It was typical. Well, at least our talk was typical until I looked up and I saw Marvin. Marvin scared the life out of me, and most of the other prisoners from what I could tell. There were the usual groups, gang factions, older guys, and a few randoms like me, but he wasn't with any group. A loner. He was quiet. And in prison or jail, the two things that you always do are look out for the quiet ones and the crazy ones. Marvin was both, quiet and crazy. And he did random shit, giggling to himself, throwing board games up in the air while people were playing them, destroying the game, and generally terrorizing the unit with his unpredictability. On top of that, Marvin was huge, and I mean huge, like 7 feet tall and 350 pounds, and most of it muscle. Quiet, crazy, 7 feet tall, 350 pounds, and me the size of one of his legs, and really still a child. Well, I was terrified. So when Marvin started stomping toward me at the phone, I had no idea what to do. Before I could run, he was in front of my face, and no sooner than he yelled, "What the fuck are you doing on my phone?" He snatched the receiver out of my hand, and it wasn't one of those new lightweight receivers. It was a heavy, old receiver, the kind that they had on payphones attached to a metal cord. Well, he snatched that receiver out of my hand and commenced beating the daylights out of me with it. Kabing, 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 all around my head. Finally, somehow I jumped free, and the receiver was swinging, dangling from the phone like a pendulum. And I could hear my dad's voice going back and forth. "Jay, what's going on? Jay, are you all right?" Before I could catch my breath, the guards rushed in and corralled Marvin and pulled me supposedly to safety. Another yelled over the PA for everyone to lock up, to get into their cells. They quickly moved Marvin up and out of the unit and took me to medical. Who knows where Marvin went? Thankfully, I was fine. I'm hard-headed. No bruises, no bleeding, just a couple lumps and some red marks. It was the first, but not the last encounter I would have with violence during my time as a guest of the state, and I was scared witless. In due time, I made it to court and received my sentence. I was to spend 6 months in the Hennepin County Workhouse, making dog collars, working in the kitchen, or taking poetry classes. It was up to me. Guess what I chose? Yeah, the poetry, you know. So I have to say that it was pretty ironical to learn Plath and Sexton while locked up. The workhouse, think of a mini penitentiary, was for me in a very strange and personal geography. It was too much. Situated on the other side of the tracks, directly between my childhood home and my high school, it had always stood as a warning, a place of legend and ghost stories among kids and adults alike. It loomed on the other side of Parker's Lake, across from the homes that dotted the east side of the shoreline. And in a land of 10,000 lakes, Parker's was lesser lake property with its workhouse feature. It always felt like doom the rare times we chanced to drive by. Yet here I was in the workhouse, a stone's throw from my bourgeois high school, taking poetry and thinking about what I was going to do with my life. It was 1991, and the Twins were about to win the World Series again, and one of my heroes, Kirby Puckett, would be the star. It was pretty okay for jail. Until I saw Marvin coming straight for me again. It was like a cheesy Hollywood high school movie, but in a workhouse. Me and my poetry friends in our uniforms hanging out in the chow hall, and all of a sudden one of my buddies notices this huge guy heading directly at me. They were terrified. I was terrified. I tried to get out of there as quickly as I could without running. Marvin knew I was scared. Time stopped. He said, "Jay, wait." And in a flash, I thought, how in the world does he know my name? And then he said it again, "Jay, wait, please." And then, "Jay, I'm not going to hurt you. I promise. Jay, let me talk to you." So I stopped. And Marvin walked up to me as my heart was pounding out of my chest. I looked up at Marvin, and his head was looking down. Not on me, but away from me, toward the ground. I could hear him breathing. I was so scared. He caught his breath and he raised his head, and I noticed that tears were streaming down his face. Time stopped again. "Jay, I'm so sorry," he said. "I didn't mean to hurt you. Medical wouldn't listen to me, Jay. I told them they were giving me the wrong medicine. They didn't listen. I told them that it was the wrong medicine. Please believe me. I didn't mean it. I won't hurt you. They have me on the right medicine here. I swear, man, I'm so sorry." And I saw that it was true. This 7-foot-tall, 350-pound man stood in front of me with tears streaming down his face, hurting, punished far more than his sentence called for. And in that moment, I began to see how our systems fail so many people, how diagnoses are objectively applied, how stigma can make voices invalid and ignorable, how prisoners are less than human to so many. And I also realized that good people can go a lifetime without seeing the evidence, the truth of a moment like the one that I had with Marvin, a moment that can profoundly change our worldview, a moment that can open our eyes and our souls to the humanity of those around us and lead us to question the validity of our criminal justice systems. It was, in many ways, the birth of myself as a punishment scholar, though I didn't know it at the time, and one of the first cataloged events of my life as an inmate. As they watched these events unfold, my poetry friends didn't get it, but I did. And in the end, Marvin and I became friends, playing horse in the gym, his 7-foot-tall self always beating me, talking, and taking walks on the small workhouse yard.